Hello everyone, my name is Jane. Currently, I find myself in a situation where I am no longer in a relationship. But there was a time when I was married to an unpleasant individual named Jack. Unfortunately, his parents, Shane and Irina, were equally unpleasant, and they consistently made me feel terrible about myself. It's worth mentioning that both Jack and I had successful careers and were financially well off, but his parents never acknowledged that. They believed that I was only interested in Jack's wealth and took advantage of him. This perception was partly due to Jack himself. He would always say things like, "Jane is fortunate to have married me. She desires a lavish lifestyle, which she wouldn't have without my support, of course." It's quite amusing, really. Even though I was the one who contributed the most to our household finances, Jack would make these claims. "Jane, I shoulder the majority of our financial responsibilities," he would say. "Oh, Jack, you are such a generous soul," his parents would respond. "Any woman would be lucky to have you." "Jane, you must take good care of our son. If he were to leave you, you would be left with nothing. Thankfully, we made you sign a prenuptial agreement before the marriage. We knew you wouldn't amount to much, so we wanted to protect our son." Yes, it's true. His parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Let me clarify, I don't have any issues with prenups. My frustration stemmed from the fact that Jack never discussed this with me beforehand. He always informed his parents that I earned significantly less than him and relied on him for everything. Consequently, they assumed I was solely interested in his wealth. Jack always advised me to go along with his lies, because his family would look down upon him if they discovered that I earned more than him. I genuinely loved Jack and didn't want him to feel humiliated, so I endured the insults. It was incredibly frustrating. I made a foolish decision by marrying Jack. That man didn't have any affection for me and lacked respect. He frequently embarrassed me because I earned less than him and spent all his money. All of those statements were false. In reality, he was actually terminated from his job a year ago and relied on me for support. However, he didn't want his parents to find out about his unemployment. Jack was becoming increasingly irritating and depleting my savings. I was growing exhausted from his lack of effort in finding employment. The final straw came when I acquired a house. I received some inheritance money from a relative and began saving for a house. I discovered a perfect match and decided to pursue it. It was a stunning house, and I instantly fell in love with it. I purchased the property and put the title solely in my name. Jack objected, but I reminded him that he hadn't contributed financially to the purchase at all. Nonetheless, he persisted in pestering me. What pushed me over the edge was what he disclosed to his parents during a family dinner. We were enjoying ourselves until his parents brought up the topic of the house. They said, "So, we heard that you two bought a large house. We visited the house before you moved in, and it's truly unique. Did you both already move in?" "Yes, Shane, we finalized the deal just a month ago. It's already well furnished, so we moved in last week. We're still settling in, but it's nice to finally have our own place." Then they asked, "So, did you two purchase the house together?" "I can't imagine how your modest salary could afford such a large house, Jane. I suppose my son contributed most of the money." I replied, "No, Mom, you're mistaken. When Jack and I were discussing the purchase of the house, we agreed to split the cost evenly." However, when it came time to reveal the truth to his parents, Jack surprised me with a different story. He claimed that he had paid for the entire house himself, thanks to his successful job and ability to save money. His parents were overjoyed and showered him with praise and congratulations, completely disregarding my involvement in the purchase. I tried to get Jack's attention, but he purposely avoided making eye contact with me. I felt a mix of anger and humiliation, but I didn't want to cause a scene in front of his parents. It wasn't until we were alone that I confronted him about his actions. I asked him why he had lied to his parents and taken all the credit for buying the house. Jack reassured me, saying that he had only done it to make his parents happy. He didn't want them to suspect that he had lost his job and disappoint them. I argued that he could have at least mentioned that we had split the cost of the house, but he insisted that he had to take all the credit. I felt both humiliated and deceived by his actions. This situation feels incredibly unjust. You see, what has been done has been done. I will go back and rectify my actions. I refuse to embarrass myself in that manner. Who cares about my parents' opinions? Let him exist as he pleases. I refuse to embarrass myself in that manner. Who cares about my parents' opinions? Let him be. So he had no issue humiliating me, but he won't subject himself to the same scrutiny for the sake of honesty. On that day, I came to a realization. Jack has undergone a complete transformation since our marriage. He no longer prioritizes me or my emotions. For the past year, he has been freeloading off of me and shows no signs of seeking employment again. I was growing weary of shouldering all the financial burdens for our family. He even argued with me about adding his name to the house title. Deep down, I could comprehend that he was taking advantage of me. However, I was undecided about what course of action to take. That is, until something more drastic occurred. The following evening, as I was preparing a snack for myself, I suddenly heard the doorbell ring. I felt curious about the visitor due to the commotion at the door. Jack hastily descended the stairs and opened the door with a hint of unease on his face. I was taken aback to find his parents standing there with all their belongings. His parents wore smiles on their faces and laughed with Jack as they brought their belongings inside. Before I could inquire about the situation, I overheard them say, "Jack, we have brought all our things here. We packed up as soon as you informed us that we could stay. You are such an exceptional son. I am delighted, Jack. When you invited us to stay at your new residence, it confirmed that we raised you well. I have informed all of my acquaintances about what an exceptional son you are. We are extremely proud of you. It's nothing, really. You were correct. It is only fair for you to stay with us since I acquired such a spacious house with ample room to accommodate you free of charge." I was astounded when I heard this. I never agreed to Jack's parents residing in my house under any circumstances. It was evident that this charade had gone too far. However, I did not want to confront Jack in front of his family. There was no way his parents would be living in my house, that was certain. Yet I was attempting to find a way to handle this situation delicately. They continued to indulge in wishful thinking. My goodness, it is truly wonderful to finally reside in a large house. We were feeling quite cramped in our previous abode. I am extremely proud of my son for achieving such success. This house is truly splendid. Yes, he mentioned that this place has 4 bedrooms. Just imagine, Irina. Oh my goodness, yes, 4 incredible bedrooms. We will claim the largest room out of all of them. It will be a dream come true for me. Why don't you both wait here while I have a conversation with your son? I am certain he has a lot of explaining to do. Jack appeared panicked when I made that statement. He began looking everywhere except at me. He knew he was in serious trouble. I was already becoming frustrated. I was extremely furious about the unexpected arrival of my in-laws. Their insistence on having the largest room infuriated me to an unimaginable extent. Jack could sense that this situation would not end well for him, so he chose to act like a coward and seek refuge behind his parents. He stated to act like a coward and seek refuge behind his parents. He stated, "Why do we need to have a private conversation when my parents will be staying here permanently? We can just discuss things in front of them. I don't believe it will be an issue." Are you certain about that, Jack? Well, if you don't mind, I am perfectly fine with discussing this in front of your parents. I have no objections either, Jane. Please go ahead and express your desires. You already know I am going to say, Jack. Your parents cannot reside here. I will not allow this to happen. You didn't even consult me before inviting them over. How can you think it is acceptable? How dare you make such a statement to my son? This is his house, and he can do as he pleases. Yes, he doesn't require your permission to accommodate us. Understand your place, Jane. You cannot speak to our son in that manner. Be cautious, or he may kick you out. Now, stop acting like a spoiled child and show us to the largest room. We cannot wait any longer. Lead us to our quarters. No, I don't believe I will do that, Irina. Irina and Shane were extremely surprised by my audacity. I was unsure whether I should be angry with them or not. Yes, they are incredibly entitled individuals, but it was Jack's fault for deceiving his parents. If Jack hadn't lied to them and invited them over, we wouldn't be facing this predicament. Nevertheless, I knew that Irina and Shane were, I must admit, the situation I found myself in was far from innocent. Irina and Shane had entered my home and were threatening to evict me. It was difficult for me to overlook their actions. They exclaimed, "What do you mean, Jane? If you don't show us the room, Jack will. Our son has assured us that we can have the largest room." We left our rented apartment because of this. Yes, they had come to my house because Jack had promised to take care of them. According to them, our son was such a wonderful person who knew how to look after his parents. He had invited them to stay in his new house, which led them to terminate their lease early. However, I couldn't help but point out their mistake, Irina and Shane. Well, in that case, you have made a significant error. I highly doubt you can stay here, let alone claim the largest room, I retorted. Their response was filled with indignation. How dare you, Jane? We don't need your permission to stay here. If you don't comply, our son will show us our room. They seemed to believe that since the house didn't belong to me, I had no authority to decide whether they could stay or not. Irina was mistaken, though. It appeared that Jack hadn't informed them yet. You have it all wrong, Irina. This house actually belongs to me, not Jack, so you won't be getting the largest room. Instead, you'll have to find accommodation elsewhere, I clarified. Their disbelief was evident as they exclaimed, "What? That's impossible. Jack has already informed us that he purchased this house. You're lying." I suggested they confirm the truth with Jack himself, saying, "Is that so, guys? Why don't you ask Jack and discover the truth? I'm certain he will clarify everything." They were quick to challenge me. "Damn right we will, Jane. Jack, tell your wife that she's being deceitful right now." They turned to Jack, urging him to confirm his ownership of the house. My apologies, but I can't assist with that. I had to get him to validate the veracity of my statement. He remained silent until I uttered, "All right, that's sufficient drama for one day. Shane and Irina, I have entertained both of you in my residence for an ample amount of time. It is now time for the two of you to gather your belongings and depart. Jane, you cannot simply expel my parents in such a manner. They terminated their lease to come and reside with us. At present, they have nowhere else to go. You cannot just abandon them on the streets." "I am capable of doing so, Jack. They did not consult with me before making these atrocious decisions, and you did not consider my input before granting them a place in my home. Look, although this may be your dwelling, I am also your spouse. If I proclaim that my parents will remain here, then they shall remain here. You cannot evict them." "You are correct. This abode currently belongs to our son as well. Therefore, anything that is yours is also his. Consequently, you cannot force us out. No, Irina, I can indeed evict you, and do not fret about Jack, as he will be expelled alongside you. Now, Jack, since we are still legally married, I will draft a formal eviction notice for you, and I assure you that your marital status will not endure for much longer." "What do you mean, Jane? Are you planning to divorce me?" "Yes, my beloved husband, I am intending to divorce you. Tomorrow, I will contact my attorney and arrange a meeting. I am confident that we will be able to serve you with divorce papers by next week." Jack immediately became distressed when I mentioned the prospect of divorce. He appeared quite enraged and acted as if I lacked the capability to take such action against him. His anger also provoked me, but I managed to maintain my composure. I would not stoop to his level. At his level, he stated, "You have the option to divorce me, Jane. If you choose to do so, I will acquire half of the residence and request spousal support from you." How do you intend to accomplish that, Jack? Have you forgotten the prenuptial agreement that you and your parents compelled me to sign? Would you like me to refresh your memory regarding its contents? Jack was suddenly reminded of the prenuptial agreement that we had executed prior to our marriage. It explicitly stated that under no circumstances could either of us claim spousal support from the other. Additionally, it stipulated that our personal assets would remain separate and would not be divided in the event of a divorce. At that time, Jack and his parents had me sign this prenuptial agreement to safeguard Jack's interests. They never anticipated that Jack would find himself in a disadvantageous position. His parents had such unwavering faith in his ability to succeed that they overlooked the unpredictable nature of fate. Now, they comprehended the ramifications of the prenuptial agreement. Suddenly, their entire demeanor changed. They expressed, "Now we do not have to hastily resort to a divorce. We can all convene and engage in a mature discussion about this matter. By the way, we can all sit down and have an adult conversation about this. Indeed, Jane, let us simply remain composed and engage in dialogue. I am confident that we may actually reach a compromise that will prove advantageous for all parties involved. I am indifferent to what may be advantageous for you individuals. I refuse to serve as a source of financial gain for you, Jack. Furthermore, I refuse to allow your parents to exploit me after the mistreatment I endured from them. That was in the past, Jane. Many years have elapsed since then. I am certain that you can move beyond that now. It was a minor issue that arose. You and your spouse simply threatened to have me expelled because I declined to accommodate you, and this occurred only a few moments ago. There is no point in offering excuses or attempting to be pleasant to me now. You and Irina must depart before I contact the authorities. I would prefer it if Jack also left, but if he requires an official notice of eviction, he will receive one soon." Jack, Shane, and Irina then proceeded to plead with me to change my decision. Those two imbeciles had actually terminated their lease because they wanted to move in with this. Jack believed that he could somehow persuade me to go along with it as I had done in the past. He had no clue that I would actually stand up against him and cease being a pushover. I was finished being the doormat of the family, not anymore. They could go to hell for all I care. When I observed that Irina and Shane were still not leaving even after an hour, I made the decision to contact the authorities. They arrived and escorted them out of the premises. After Irina and Shane departed, Jack yelled at me for humiliating his parents and expelling them. I reminded him that he too had only 1 month to vacate my residence. That caused him to alter his behavior and become apologetic and remorseful. The way this family altered their behavior seriously gave me a headache. Fortunately, I didn't have to deal with them for long. From that night onward, I prohibited Jack from entering my room. He stayed in the guest room until it was time for him to depart. Yes, he was served with an eviction notice, so he had no choice. Meanwhile, his parents, after spending a significant portion of my savings on a hotel, I found myself in the position of needing to find a new place to rent. To my surprise, Jack was not allowed to join me in my new living arrangement. Just like my parents, he was left scrambling to find a place of his own. It seems that they wanted Jack to face the consequences of his lies and abandonment. Since then, our relationship has become strained, with each of us blaming the other for our current situation. As a result, Jack's parents have decided to withdraw their support. It appears that they were only interested in him when he had money. Jack had to rely on his friends for temporary accommodation until he could secure employment. Eventually, I made the decision to file for divorce from Jack. I simply could not continue to stay with someone who disrespected me and revealed themselves to be vain and selfish. This was not the person I fell in love with. Despite Jack's efforts to change my mind, I remained firm in my decision. I refused to allow myself to be taken advantage of any longer. Since we did not have children, our divorce was finalized after just 6 months of separation. During that time, I focused on rebuilding myself and have now started to explore dating again. Surprisingly, Jack still holds on to the hope that we may reconcile, but unfortunately for him, that will only ever be a fantasy.